In this visual essay, I want to delve into the very poetic yet unsettling imagery that Ramsay explores to aid her naturalistic filmmaking approach. Her use of composition, sound design, and characters guide us on an internal journey of the protagonist's psyche that is not explicit through dialogue, so we are more drawn to understand the film in a more psychoanalytical way. We are to feel as the protagonist feels. This is more than a social realistic portrayal, and is instead a compelling exploration of performance and psychological realism. The film Morven Callar was Ramsay's second feature. It doesn't differ from her previous films that tend to capture the essence of a working-class Glaswegian backdrop, subjecting the characters to a relentless torment that is their social environment. In Morven Callar, we begin with a death, as we do in Ratcatcher. The remainder of the film is an internal journey of how the characters deal with grief. They are seen to be indifferent from the events, which gives way to spontaneous acts of escape. The scene depicted here is the moment of which Morven symbolically relinquishes herself from a lifestyle once bound to her. With Ramsay's films, there is always an elephant in the room, an unspoken yet apparent frustration of a powerless working class subjugated by the government. Ramsay, who grew up in the 70s, experienced the establishment of the Thatcher government and marginalization towards her community. It is exhibited in Ratcatcher as the setting is a garbage-like urban jungle during the dustbinmen's strike, but it is further emphasized through three-dimensional characters and their experience of existentialism within their own brutal reality that has become a personal journey. I suppose I am saying in brief that the external circumstances of the economy aren't really addressed in the films and instead act like a shadow, inescapable and bearing weight for the characters. It is, however, a weight that they tend to bear, as if suffocated deep within their psyche, and because it has not surfaced, the characters can keep composure. The introduction of death in Morven Callar leads to the progression of the protagonist, but the undertones were already present before the traumatic event. To further illustrate my point, Morven is not dismayed by the death of her boyfriend, but is instead liberated, as it has created new possibilities for her. She comes into a sum of money that lifts her further out of her oppressive, lackluster, and hopeless surroundings. We can establish that the boyfriend plays the role of a tormented artist, and is likely a narcissist who uses Callar to fulfill his posthumous wishes. On his death note he writes, "Don't try to understand, be brave," which conveys a lack of communication in a relationship. Morven has never had an avenue to express herself, and is likely the shoulder that her boyfriend's torment rested on. It is of no surprise to me that his death comes as an open door to what was her four-cornered life. Morven is not unfamiliar with recreational substances and means to escape. One can assume that her quality of life and perhaps deprivation of opportunity within a working class has triggered the need for indulgence. She comes across as someone who lacks identity, or at least rejects the current one that has been set for her. In Ramsay's previous work, such films as Small Deaths, Gasman, or Ratcatcher all have a child protagonist, and we are always behind them and sharing their perspective. The film Morven Callar has the same approach, as our protagonist is facing internal struggles that are likely beyond her comprehension, or too fearful for her to unbox, so she comes close to representing a child. Ramsay shows internal struggles with her close proximity shots. We tend to be left tightly in the face of the image. Ramsay doesn't shy away from close-ups of Morven, which I believe are crucial for the telling of her internal undertones. Ramsay began her career as a photographer, which she has since translated into the way she engages us visually. Sometimes she will cut parts of the character out of the frame, so we are left to interpret the rest of the image for ourselves. Cinematically, she will use sound, then, to give context to the image. What we want from the image is what we must feel for. For example, in this scene, Callar's eyes are cut off, but the droning tone from the phone is all that is needed to understand Callar's vacant surface. We can actively imagine for ourselves the indifference shown in our eyes. Scenes are often absent of dialogue, so we learn to appreciate what is visual storytelling and allow for the sound to elicit a more profound response. Ramsay has a more cinematic approach and does not substitute the image for dialogue. She quotes Robert Bresson in one of her interviews. "When a sound can replace an image, cut the image, or neutralize it, the ear goes more towards the within, the eye towards the outer." So a lot of the time we just have a beautiful aesthetic image which depth lies behind the eyes of the performer or the sound. Whenever Ramsay does use dialogue, it is usually contrasting to the speaker's body language. We are being asked to look internally.
So, Morven, are you working on any new material?
Material? Just give us just a few words.
Go on.
What are you working on next?
I think I'm on holiday.
Okay, well, don't be shy. What's your next book about?
Sneak preview.
I work in a supermarket.
So, to summarize, from a collective look at Ramsay's early work, I can see that the events occurring within the protagonist's life do not dictate the emotional progression of the characters. The foundation for their psyche has already been formed as a product of their environment. Their past has already led to the suffocation of their true emotions. We join the characters as they experience the unfolding events, while they are tailed by the shadow which is the repressed self that has been haunting them long before what we see on screen. Thank you for watching.